Make way for the bad guy!
What is up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Crowd Pleaser, the talk show that brings you the inside scoop on what it takes to be a male entertainer in today's age. I'm your host, Cesar Collazo, aka the Crowd Pleaser. With me, as always, is my good friend Tyler Owen. How you doing, Tyler?
Good. It's good to be back on the show, Caesar. It's been quite some time. It's good to talk about some more subjects and get back into what it's like to have a life of us in the stripper lifestyle.
Right on, man. So we're actually recording in Tyler's truck tonight. Thanks to the Patreon, we went ahead and picked up a mobile recording device, or portable recording device, and so we're able to record more episodes for you guys to enjoy. So that leads me to the Patreon, where it's patreon.com/crowdpleaser. You can get on there and support the show and help us develop a better product for you, i.e., like I said, this recorder as well as a webcam, so you guys can start seeing our live video footage and stuff like that. You get really neat perks and things. I just hosted the my shower act up on the Patreon, where you could see there, as well as Nick's birthday act that I just finished choreographing last month. Next up is La Bear Dallas. It's a home office for both myself and Tyler. We dance 5 nights a week, and we are the right spot for any occasion, whether it's bachelorette party, baby shower, birthday party, divorce party, you name it, we got it. If you even just need a night out of the house, we'll make sure you feel comfortable. Alright, so moving into our topic, today we're going to discuss the stripper diet. It's one of the questions that we get gets brought up quite often. At least once a week I'll get asked, oh my god, what do you eat? Or oh my god, how do you eat? And this and that. I believe it's the same for Tyler. So we're going to go ahead and go into detail and discuss the different phases of dieting that most strippers take. This, of course, is just a way of doing things. It's not the way. Everyone that's been into bodybuilding or any kind of fitness has had their own kind of diet adjusted to them. But this is a good baseline for anyone that's interested in dieting, both male and female. Just to throw in the disclaimer, though, I'd like to say that you cannot diet nonstop, at least to the level of proficiency and aesthetics that we aim to please at. Even us working year-round, we don't maintain the same diet. It's way too hard on your emotions and your mental state, right, Tyler?
Right, yeah, I'll definitely have to agree on that. And I have people asking me that all the time. You know, they always think that we probably eat chicken and rice all day long, all year long. Even when I go back home to Kansas, where I'm originally from, most of my family members don't even think that I can really eat normal food with them. And we're also humans, and we all kind of boil down to the same factor of fast food and things like that. And it's actually pretty nice to have a little bit of flexibility with your diet and not also kill yourself year round.
Yep, true story. And let's just face it, our job plays a lot on your emotional wear and tear, so you definitely need to kind of carb up every once in a while to help you deal with that, because dieting a certain way does create certain chemical reactions in your body, which is what your brain uses, and so you have to really kind of gauge it, and you can only maintain certain more difficult diets or strict diets for a limited time. So with that, let's go ahead and move into our first kind of diet, which I typically call my more hardcore diet.
Right.
And this is what we use for kind of like specific times. It's almost like getting ready for a show, for Europa, for the Arnold or something like that.
Right.
And these are for photo shoots, for strip offs. Excuse me. Typically one night events where you have a certain goal where you want to peak, if I could use that term from bodybuilding and stuff, for a certain 2 or 3 day limit.
Yeah, and usually most people will set these kind of days out, and they like to set them down in fractions for the most part. And what I like is, bodybuilding, like a lot of you guys know, and also motivational speaking, things like that also interest my my outside life. And besides the club, I've always heard that people like to set them out in little fractions, meaning, 30 days out, I want to be at this point, or 60 days, or ever how long you have, till that special event or anything comes up, even a wedding or anything that someone may be listening and wanting to hit a certain goal. You always want to have some type of ending date, and not just say tomorrow or one day or anything like that. So that's when we come down to a hardcore diet and what it really means to get to that point, and why the whole the time frame is so specific for us.
Yes, so these diets are not easy to do. You're going to be fairly miserable through most of it, because you're really blade running what your body needs to what your body processes to look your absolute best. Typically with these kind of diets, you're going to look as best aesthetically as you possibly can, despite not feeling the best.
Of course.
And that's why we do it for photo shoots, because once you take that photo, it'll last you a million years. and same thing for strip offs. You're competing against the best for the cash prize, so you definitely want to look at, and people that walk across stages and stuff like that. So typically this diet, we're kind of gonna be in the ballpark of stuff because Tyler has a good 100 pounds on me, so our diet numbers are gonna change, but the theories behind the diet stay fairly similar. On a hardcore diet, you're gonna keep a low carb count. You aren't gonna get rid of carbs altogether. Reason being is that you still need them to process energy and to essentially maintain your muscle mass. If you eliminate all carbs altogether, your body starts feeding off of your muscles. So you're going to keep a low carb diet, focus mainly on fats and proteins, and your caloric intake is going to be right on that margin. You're going to kind of gauge it to figure out what your body needs to survive on a daily basis, including workouts and stuff like that, and that's what you're going to maintain, right?
Yeah, and I'm definitely going to have to agree with Caesar on that. Everyone's so different that we can't sit here and say, this person needs 2,000 calories and it's flat across the board, because everyone processes things differently. And low carbs to me could be, 100 or 80 or 50, and to Caesar it could be 20, and that's roughly a half a cup of oats. So, and that's the whole day. And this isn't just one meal, one setting. This is a whole day that we're talking about that actually comes down and boils into, how much carbs this person's having in the whole intake of the day. That's a 24-hour period coming down to each and every meal. It's measured out, everything like that. So not everyone is so cut and dry. It can be a little more specific. It's nice to tweak it, and everybody kind of knows their body a little better. I've never really got down to, I've gotten down to single percentage body fat. Maybe 9% is the best I've ever been at. But I've never gotten down to 4%, or even Caesar's been very lean before too. So everyone's so different. So it's really a good baseline to kind of understand the difference in what we have to offer in knowledge and what actually is going to work for specifically you. So that's the point that we want to get across, is that it is a low carb, low calorie diet in a general sense of what's going to work for everyone.
Correct. Now, typically during these diets, you're also going to cut back on as much sodium as possible, because sodium allows the body to retain water. And though water weight does fluctuate from fairly quickly because it is processed fairly quickly, it sits in between your layers of skin.
Right.
Thus, it creates a less defined look. So when you want to look your leanest, you're going to minimize your sodium intake. And as you get closer to your crunch date, you're also going to water deplete. Now, this is bad for you, plain and simple.
Right.
You typically only do it when done correctly, and I'll let Tyler kind of explain this a little better, is on your last 3 days. And it's not one of those things where you cut water altogether. You water deplete slowly. You'll go half gallon, quarter, quart, and stuff like that. So go ahead and talk a little bit about that, Tyler.
Yeah, that really does come down to a lot of physique competitors, bikini competitors, and other people in the bodybuilding atmosphere, even also magazine covers and stuff like that. Those people really do cut a lot of water, and the longest I've ever heard of professionals cutting water is 7 days, and that's taking diuretics, and there's also certain drugs that are pharmaceutical that people take to really get that dry, super lean look where their skin is literally nothing beneath the surface between muscle and the muscle fibers itself. So just like Caesar's saying, it's very, 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 very strenuous and hard on the body if you don't know what you're doing correctly. And this is, like we said, to come back to the actual topic, this is hardcore. This is like the hardest thing that you could do to your body. It's not nothing that's easy to maintain, and it's only for a certain amount of time, and it's for one ending goal. So water depletion doesn't go for a very long period of time, and you also want to implement, distilled water and things like that, so your water retention isn't as high. That's why we're also saying minimum sodium and things like that, and keeping your body at its driest look, meaning not any body fat or water weight setting on top of your muscles. That way you can showcase those muscles better.
Correct. During this time frame, also when you're dieting, typically you're going to move away from weight training and just start emphasizing on cardio,
right,
including or incorporating things like sweatsuits and stuff like that to really get that water out of your body.
Mm-hmm.
And it's strenuous. Another thing is typically the carb intake you do take is reduced to greens because it's more fibrous carbs, and thus you enter a state of ketosis where the body switches from processing carbs for fuel to fat. Now, this takes strict discipline, and like I said, it's not something you can maintain for a long time. It's typically for something very specific and a short term.
Mm-hmm.
Long term to prep, but short term where you're at your peak. To touch on what Tyler was saying as well, the water depletion also, you got to remember for bodybuilders, they do exert themselves on stage, but as a stripper, you're going on stage multiple times a night,
Right.
bumping your cardio up. So it's really difficult to be in a position of low water, essentially, and still perform that.
Yeah,
So
it's really funny that Caesar mentions that because I recently just got a Fitbit and I didn't even realize on how many calories I actually burned here at the club. And you know, I do a minimal amount of dancing. You know, Caesar and Ace and Damien, guys that actually, you know, fully in and out entertain and actually dance, you know, with choreography and things like that. Really do a lot more physical exercise than what I would protrude out or do with my body. I burn roughly 1,000 calories here at work to 1,200, and that's not excluding, you know, what I do at working out. I don't do a ton of cardio because I'm not really trying to cut. I'm more or less in a maintenance type phase. Yeah, I'd like to get leaner and things like that, but for myself, we actually do burn a lot of calories on stage, so we also have to equate that into our cardio as well. And you don't want to get yourself, you know, sick and be dehydrated.
yep. All right, so moving along now, we're going to go into our summer diet. This is something where you're still staying fairly lean, but it's more maintainable. You don't wear and tear on your body as much. You're just kind of maintaining a more appealing physique without letting yourself go. So one of the bases for this is typically 6 days a week you maintain an average carb diet and then manage your proteins and your fat. A rule of thumb that I have is I typically try to match my protein intake versus gram per pound.
Right.
So I'm 165 pounds, so I try to get in at least 165 grams of protein. I always prefer to eat my protein than to drink it, but that's obviously custom to what people have, if you know, time of day and what they're available to do. I normally carry a cooler with all my food in it for the day.
Yeah, and what he's talking about besides drinking and eating the food, and we call this whole foods. Whole food eating is something that you actually have to process. You know, whole chicken, or steak or beef or whatever your protein source is. We're not talking, you know, protein shakes like he said. We really try to focus on 165 milligrams of protein, which is whole foods. And for me, it's even more. It's almost double 100. It's 100 more grams of protein in whole foods, and that's a lot. I mean, roughly, you know, 6 to 8 ounces is anywhere from 24 to 32 grams of protein, you know, per serving, and that's actually quite a bit of chicken, you know. And it's not really a lot of seasoning, and it's not chicken marsala or, you know, chicken parmesan or anything like that. So
Yeah.
it's really cut
Chicken
and dry.
fried steak.
Yeah, and it's nothing that a lot of people think like, oh man, I just had a country fried steak at KFC. It's not that. So what he's saying is this: really don't drink your proteins and try to get them from whole foods, and you'll feel better too because your metabolism is going to come up. And everything that he's saying about not drinking it is coming back down to whole foods. So don't always think that a liquid diet is the best diet. It's a supplementation for that.
Correct. The good thing about that too, as well as like you mentioned, it takes a lot of food to equal that intake.
Oh,
so
yeah.
mentally it feels better.
Oh,
When
yeah.
you're dieting, the last thing you want to do is feel like you have to wait for your next meal. But if you're doing it strictly off of whole foods, now you can eat every time. It lasts longer. You feel better because you're actually eating versus, oh, great, I get to eat in 2 hours. You down a
Correct.
protein shake in
And
about 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, even seconds. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't take long. And the thing is that your body, when you start dieting at first, it sucks, man. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm the worst dieting person out there. I have a lot of knowledge and I've looked a lot of things up, and I don't know every single diet out there, but I have a vast amount of knowledge with this stuff. And I've been doing it for, you know, roughly almost 5 years now, and looking into variations in diet and myself and what works for me and what works for other people. And really, it comes down to what that person needs for themselves. So I personally, I really hate to diet, but in the in-game scheme of things, I try to maintain the best I can. So Caesar diet's a lot harder than I do. I just really try to maintain the best I can, have a little bit of flexibility, and also get down there because your body is muscle memory. Once you get that lean, it's easy to get lean again. So the hardest part is getting started, but once you get there, it's really just repetition, the same thing over and over, and you're going to be like, man, I'm freaking hungry after this.
Yep.
Like before, I used to be so full after the 6 ounces of chicken or, you know, a cup of broccoli or whatever, and then you're going to realize, holy crap, like, I'm hungry all the time.
Yep.
So it really comes down to repetition and just really consistency. Don't kill yourself at first. Baby steps, you know, whatever. And, you know, people on the Patreon are more than probably welcome to ask Caesar and myself, you know, any questions that they would have about what they think we should look into or what would work for them, and we could direct you in the right direction, I believe.
Yep. The one last thing about the summer diet is that typically guys will offer themselves a cheat day. I know everyone's heard about that. They've got T-shirts where every day is a cheat day and things
Yeah.
like that, and it's a real purpose behind it. The body is constantly trying to adapt to survive. So eventually, certain dietary practices end up losing their value.
Right.
So your body adjusts and starts tweaking. That's why the body can go into a state of ketosis. If you don't give it any carbs, the body's going to be like, well, I need to get energy somewhere. And that's why it switches to fat. And you'll feel a difference. Your last week or a couple of days where you're not processing you're not getting the carbs you need, you're going to feel very low energy. But once your body makes that switch to fat and you're giving it that extra fat through like, guacamole or avocados and like natural good
oils,
fats. Yes.
yeah, anything like that. Even vinegar, not really vinegars. I would say some dressings that you incorporate in your food and cooking supplements.
Yeah.
Coconut oil and stuff like that. Good, healthy, solid fats that actually will help your body burn off a lot
Fish.
more fat. Yeah, fish too. Fish is a good one.
So then you'll start to see that you start to feel more like yourself because the body adjusted. So people create a cheat day in diets, and for me, I do it either Saturday night or Sunday based off
Right.
of how bad or good of a night I had.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because I always wait, and that's the best thing is it's just like we talked before with the hardcore diet. Set a date, make an effort to be like, I'm not gonna eat bad until Sunday, or I'm not gonna eat bad till Monday, or after work this. But it doesn't mean go out and fully overindulge too. I mean, do it within reason. Caesar told me about this place that had these great pancakes. He was like, man, you got to go there and have these pancakes. They're freaking amazing. I save them for my cheat day. So we all have these goals that we have to set, and it's definitely an ending result. So you have to plan your week before you can even get the day started. Remember that.
The trick about cheat days is it's actually typically just a cheat meal, and you don't want to go completely off the wagon. What this does is you'll go out and either prepare yourself a meal at home or go out and eat, and it's fine. You can indulge yourself, but like Tyler said, you don't want to go completely off the wagon and have like Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
The science behind this is A, it gives you a little bit of a reward for dieting all week. B, it allows your your mental stability, like you're kind of eating your feelings away. All right, so you're kind of resetting your clock on that. And finally, it tricks your body. What you're going to find out, if I could get a little vivid, is when you're dieting correctly, as soon as you introduce a different type of food, i.e. like a burger or something to your body's going to process it differently, and you're going to feel it in your bowel movements. There's going to be, like, that day, you're going to just feel different because your body's not used to it. And what it does is it creates that check result. Kind of like when you change up your workout and your body's sore again, it does the same thing for your diet. So it makes your digestive system and the way your body processes food, it keeps it on check so your diet continues to work.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that, Tyler?
I definitely agree with you on that. And another thing that I like to, read up on, it's something that's very hard to do. When I say I'll have a couple pieces of pizza, I end up having a whole one, a whole pizza. So a really good thing to do is kind of have a vast majority of everything. That's from like a couple pieces of pizza, maybe a little piece of steak, maybe some potatoes, fries, and a little bit of cheesecake. And I'm talking small portions because, like Caesar said, your body's going to process it. And then for me, I almost get this crazy euphoric feeling when I diet for so long. And then I turn around and have this huge pump at the gym. My vascularity's insane. My muscles just feel a lot more tense, and just the workout's that much better because your body's actually breaking down these things like, ooh, I haven't had this sugar in a while. This is great, blah, 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 blah. And it's going to break it down. You're going to almost have more energy, and it's going to bring you back up and stabilize you for those next couple of days.
Right on. And one last thing, just to touch on physical fitness. During this time, you have an even balance of lifting and cardio.
Correct.
Nothing too crazy in either direction. You just want to balance out your workouts and maintain as well. All right, so the last phase of our diet is the winter diet. This is typically when the club slows down so the guys can kind of ease up on their diet a little bit, but it's also when we can take advantage of the slow times and make gains, which is something that you've also heard typically a lot because all muscleheads talk about those crazy gains.
Yeah, and it sounds so cheesy whenever you say gains. I mean, I'm not really, in that whole realm or genre of kind of like the D-bag of, bodybuilders or anything like that, or most of the time the guys that talk like that or say things that are, I'm putting on all the pounds or whatever, those guys really don't work out hard. So the reason why we say gains is just a very universal term for putting on muscle. And this is really a good time for us to focus on ourselves and our sanity, and also to be a normal human being, because we do like to eat. We like to eat out, and we like to go socialize and do things. We don't like to, confine ourselves to one social standard where we have to lock ourselves in a room and be like, I cannot eat Oreos for, 3 or 4 months or a whole year, or the 5 years that I work here, 10 years or however long. And it's nice to have that flexibility and that little break, which you can't overindulge, but you also have to realize, man, I'm a human being, and I'm not going to be shredded year round and have, single percentage body fat all the time. It's so hard on your mental state too to actually hit this time.
Correct. Yes. So the science behind it, typically, you've heard of certain people that have been into fitness have heard of dirty bulk and clean bulk and stuff like that. As a stripper, you're going to want to maintain your foundation. And so when you're trying to gain weight, you're doing it just as strictly as you did when you were trying to diet.
Exactly.
You're going to increase to a high calorie intake, but you're going to adjust to what you're eating as well. You're still going to want to eat fairly clean, and you're still going to want to eat more than you drink now, but you got to get it in somehow. If your normal diet is a lot of food for you, then you can supplement with protein shakes to give you the extra 30 or 40 grams of protein as you're doing. You almost want to overeat when you're trying to gain. That's the safest way, because the last thing you want to do is go through the trouble of paying for supplements, not that you need them, and working on hard and not giving your body the fuel it needs to grow.
Right. Yeah, and the thing is that Caesar is definitely a good example for someone that's actually done, bulking in this last winter. Caesar really did put on a lot of weight and size, and it was good quality muscle. And, for myself, I'm a large individual. I'm very scared of doing a gaining session. I've never have, because I'm so self-conscious of my prior state. Me being previously overweight at 330 pounds, I don't want to get large. And normally when I maintain, I'm 253 pounds right now, and that's me a little light. I usually stay about 260, so not everyone looks to get big like that, but the people that do, Caesar put on a great amount of size and looked amazing still, and everybody was like, man, this guy looks ginormous. So it's good to have that little separation and have that nice high caloric intake, and also your protein and carb focus needs to be on point as well. So there's different variations. It also needs to still be clean. You don't have to sit there and kill yourself and have dry chicken all the time, but you can't go to McDonald's and be like, man, I'm hitting all my proteins right here, I'm hitting all my gains right here. It has to be still set standard, like, hey, I'm not gonna eat out every single meal, and have good quality, nice lean food. Caesar still ate really good, but he ate everything in sight, and he was putting on such good size that everybody noticed around the club.
Yeah, I had myself practically on a timer, because there were plenty of times where I was eating and I wasn't even hungry.
Right.
I'm typically not much of a carb guy. I don't know, just the way my diet works, I can go pretty well without our minimal carbs. The carbs I try to stick to are greens and fibrous carbs, spinach, broccoli, and I just shred them up in a blender and then mix them in my proteins. My proteins, salmon is pretty much the only fish I really prefer. I do enjoy chicken. Turkey is probably the one I really feast on the most. I'll get ground turkey, throw it in the blender, and cook it that way with different seasonings. Steak is also a good one that also brings in fat, so that's something to incorporate. What kind of carbs do you like, Tyler?
Most of the time when I really prefer my carbs, I'm not a big greens eater. A lot of people will look at me and laugh and say, you really don't like salads? And I'll look them dead in the eyes and say, I don't even like lettuce on my sandwiches. So for myself, I will really focus on a lot of oats. I really like steel cut oats. In the morning, that's something I really like. And I do like a little bit of grains. I like a little bit of some type of toast or anything in the morning, or some type of rice in the afternoon, and I'll mix it up between white and brown rice, and that's usually when I'm not sitting there focusing or trying to kill myself. It's been a little over a year since I've actually tried to diet for a for being lean. Now I look at efficiency, and also keeping things pretty well maintenance, and also putting on good size. I'd rather cut and be shredded and nice and proportioned than put on a lot of size. So this category I don't really focus on too much, but I know a lot of knowledge, and I've actually watched people like Caesar and Jay and other guys that take fitness and bodybuilding pretty seriously. So for myself, it's oats and a lot of brown rice, and I use that even in my cutting phase. So it's just it's quantity at that point. So more is more implemented in the diet.
Yeah, and you've got the maintenance thing down. You have your body down to a science, because even when you've said that you haven't been dieting the best, you still look phenomenal. So you definitely have the ability to maintain that for a long period of time down, hands down. So a few things just to add before we wrap this up. As far as powdered proteins go, I understand it's convenient, it's stuff like that. So sometimes you do look to it. I'm not gonna name any names because that no one sponsors me on this or us on this show, so
Right.
I'm definitely not going to. But typically, you want to try out different proteins. The two things I look for, honestly, taste is not the biggest thing for me, because if I just don't like the taste, I'll just pound it, like gulp it down and call it a day.
Right.
But you want to look for stuff that has low sugars. All right, because a lot of proteins that taste better, they'll throw sugars in there.
Right.
Carbs are one thing. Sugar, even though it's a carb, it processes entirely different, because if you don't use it, it turns into fat.
Right.
So it's something to consider. That's why you can eat a bunch of rice and be okay as long as
Exactly.
your exercise is correct, but sugars will mess you up. So you want something with low sugar count. And you also, I personally prefer stuff that dissolves.
Yeah.
There's some that they clump up
Yeah,
and
and they're
whatnot.
really gross too, man.
Yeah.
And then they'll clump up, and then they'll taste like chalk in between. So that's
Exactly.
a good point, man.
So-
That's a good point.
So I always try to find the proteins that, once you pour water and stir them up, you can stir them up with a spoon and they dissolve
Almost
very
instant.
yes.
Yeah. Those are great.
That's something to consider. Definitely, if you're a bar kind of person, you got to be careful about those, because they'll have a high sugar count.
Yeah.
Or the bars will be, there's a difference between a protein bar and a meal replacement bar.
Yeah.
You're talking
the carb
about
intake is
Yeah.
totally different.
Yep, you're talking about something. A protein bar is typically around 120 to 150 calories, versus a meal replacement bar could be upwards of 600 calories.
Oh yeah. And another thing to capitalize on, just talking about, meal replacements and stuff like that, we'll just give you a really, really basic, very, very basic standard to follow. Let's say 300 calories per meal, roughly 20 to 30 grams of protein, and maybe 10 to 15 grams of carbs. And then from there on, keep your sodium and everything else as low as possible per meal. That's probably the best way, and you're going to have that 6 times a day. So that's probably the best standard to kind of just ballpark what you're having. That's just a good stepping stone to kind of just get started, because that's the hardest part, is getting started. So that's another thing to look at, is try to stay away from the protein bars and meal replacement bars. And if you do, just focus on fats, or this is the direction I would go. Proteins, carbohydrates, sugars, fats, and overall caloric intake, obviously. Those are the kind of things that you should look at. You don't need to know exactly what vitamins are in it or anything like that. Just a set standard is those are the things to look for. The best way ever.
Eating out is another big killer of diets. Yes, you can choose the correct things when you eat out, but the fact of the matter is you can't control how the food is prepared
Yeah.
and cooked. So even if you end up going out and being like, give me a grilled chicken and nothing but broccoli, a lot of restaurants are going to cook their
Olive
chicken.
oil,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
whatever. It's overdone. So that's another good thing, Caesar. That's a good idea.
You might decide you're eating correctly, but the fact of the matter is that your vegetables are going to be doused in oil and seasoned and things like that. And so, despite the fact that on the surface you're eating correctly, you're still taking in extra nutritional values that you don't necessarily need.
Right.
So that's something to look out for, and you still want to control that. Meal prepping goes a long way for dieting. A long way. I typically meal prep for my whole week because I'm lazy and I shop at Costco, so I like to kind of put everything together in one day and freeze half of it. But for the other people, it's perfectly all right to meal prep for 3 days, 4 days, number everything, make it nice and easy. The easier you make it on yourself, the easier it is to diet. Take all the guesswork out of it.
Right.
All right, Tyler, I think that's a wrap for this show's topic. I hope our friends out there have definitely learned something. Like Tyler said, if you have any questions, by all means, reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to answer those. Let's move into our worst and best events of the week. Tyler, do you want to start off with your worst event?
Yeah, I think this last week was pretty interesting for me. I say I fall off stage, but sometimes I'll get caught up and get on stage and kind of be just joking around with people and not really see where my foot is. And we have this little ledge right where there's a little drink stand for the girls on these side stages, and I about slipped all the way off. Luckily my foot stopped on this little ledge and knocked a drink over or so, but other than that I was really close to falling the whole way off on some girls. So luckily that was probably a really embarrassing moment, but it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah, I could have definitely seen one of those moments of the shadow creeping over the girl's face, and she was like, no!
Yeah, I definitely could see that myself.
With your luck, it would be like the 98-pound girl in the club as well, so she has no hope of saving herself. You just see her arm sticking out from underneath your chest.
Yeah, looking like what is that? The little Wizard of Oz where
Oh,
the lady's
yeah, yeah.
sticking her feet out.
Yeah. All right. So for me, I had a girl on stage that was doing Get Down, Make Love, where I put her in the chair and spin her around and have some fun with her.
Mhm.
And you know, they come into the club all the time, but this woman ended up, you've seen it before. She ended up having these plastic penises that glue in the dark, that had their own LED lights in them on her head as antennas. And then she was wearing a sash that let her know she was the bachelorette with LED lights on them as well. And I'll tell you what, the entire time I was dancing on this girl, like either the sash was coming off her shoulder or blinding me, or like when I straddled her to spin her around, the penis antennas were hitting me in the face. It was just the most awkward thing. And like everyone was cheering and having a great old time. And I have no idea if they were laughing at her reactions or just laughing at me getting whacked in the face with these antennas. And then even with the strobes hitting me, so then the strobe would hit me, but then the penis antenna would hit me, and then, oh God, I was just like, tried to move her hands, the sash would come down, and she was trying to fix it half the time. I was just like, sweet baby Jesus, let me just finish this, please. She would not take those things off. They kept falling, like leaning back. I was like, just one more spin and they'll fall off her head, and she kept fixing them. I'm like, oh.
Just let them go.
Yeah, I was like, please, just let them hit the floor.
That's funny. That's a good time.
Yeah, no kid. Yeah, it was a good time for them. I would definitely say it was not my best part of the week. For me, my best part of the week was I was on side stage dancing, and one of the girls kept eyeballing me, and finally she got up to tip me. So she got up and she's like, hey, I'm part of your herd. And I was like, what? Like, huh? What do you, I thought it was like I'm like, I didn't call anyone a cow tonight. What are you talking about? And she's like, no, I'm part of your nerd herd. I'm like, oh, that's fantastic. But I'm like, wait, like I kind of know my nerd herd. It's not that. I was like, what's going on? And she's like, yeah, I have the sticker to prove. I'm like, oh, okay, because I made those nerd herd stickers a long time ago.
Right.
I was like, that's fantastic.
That's
I'm so
awesome.
glad to hear it. So it turns out she has one, and felt a little bad for some reason. She's like, yeah, I have it kind of where people put their speed their tollway pass at. That's where she has it. And she's like, yeah, I get to see it every day. And she's like, I'm a little embarrassed about it. I know, I think that's phenomenal. That's awesome.
That's
yeah.
Cool.
So I thought it was super cool. And I told her I'd mention her on the podcast, so here she is.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's very similar to you know, me. I had a book club come back, and they made these little button-on pins with actually pictures of me on there, and they said Tyler's Tarts. It was actually quite funny to have some people come back, you know, months later and go out of the way to make a picture of me on these little buttons, and you know, a couple girls come back, and I was like, that's freaking cool, man. That's so awesome. So I hung it on my locker and told them, I said, I appreciate them, you know, taking the time out of their day to make something like that for me. So it's always nice to have people that go out of the way and, you know, do some nice things that not a lot of people would really do or show up for us. And it's really cool to have that happen. So we definitely appreciate the people that support us and, you know, see us outside the club as human beings and stuff.
No, that is really neat when someone kind of surprises you with a little extra effort. It definitely makes us appreciate our job and the people we meet. Cool, man. Well, with that, let's go ahead and call it a wrap. Last thing I want to mention is our Kickstarter. We currently have my reality show project on there where I'm kind of mixing So You Think You Could Dance meets American Idol meets Magic Mike. So I'm planning on having contestants on the show. They're going to compete for your attention and preference every week. And someone gets voted off the show by you. You actually get to control who stays or goes. And the winner will take home a cash prize. So definitely check it out. Support the cause. If you think it's a good idea, make it a reality. And once again, thanks for listening. And we look forward to seeing you next episode.
Thank you, girls. And once again, we always thank all the Patreons for coming out and supporting us. And we always love the people that always come to LeBaron and always say, hey, we listen to your podcast. Hey, you're Tyler Owen. This is Caesar. And we just want to let you know we really appreciate it. That means a lot to us. So the people that are listening, we appreciate that very dearly. And we love you guys that come out and say those things and really give us kudos for making the show happen. So we just want to say thank you, girls, so much for making this a possibility for us. And hopefully we can make it evolve into something even greater. So we want to say thank you one last time. And we appreciate all the Patreons and you guys coming out to listen. Have a good day.
Awesome, man. It's great having you on the show. Thank you.